I feel like real estate is like similar to having a baby. Like everybody wants to share their experience with you.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
You're never ready. You're never prepared.
Okay,
right.
good.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're nervous, you're probably feeling all the right things.
Yeah.
So, but it's actually just like everybody and their mom wants to tell you about their experience, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because like, especially as a first time home buyer, you like want to take all of that in, and then you're like, oh gosh, and you're like, your head's spinning around. You're like, who do I go to advise? And so that's why I'm like, just go to somebody you trust. Somebody you trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not going to steer you wrong. They have your back.
Yeah. It's really important. I think that's the key too, is just making sure you have a team around you that you can trust that's going to give you good advice and good information.
Yeah. I feel like now I'm like, what are closing costs? What's an episiotomy?
Do I get an epidural for this?
Yeah, exactly. Hello and welcome to the Ended Up in Vegas podcast. I'm Nikki.
I'm Megan.
Today we are catching you up on all things housing market. We're the Pucci Ramos Group at Simply Vegas. Our newest member, Amber Romero, is here with us.
Hello.
Welcome, Amber.
Yay.
We're going to be talking today about housing prices, interest rates. The Fed recently announced that they're not going to increase rates again. So we'll talk about how that impacts mortgage rates, even though it doesn't directly link to it. So let's get into it.
Yes.
First of all, let's talk about where housing prices are right now. And you've got those numbers, latest numbers for August.
So the median home price, a single family home in Las Vegas, is now at $447 and some change. So we were at $450 for July. We're now at $447. So we're kind of been bouncing around these numbers. I think we were at $447 or $440 something the month before that. So we're kind of staying in the same vein.
Yeah.
And so Amber is duly licensed. She's on our team on the real estate side, but she also has her lending license. So tell us a little bit where interest rates are.
Interest rates have kind of bobbed around the same, about 7.5 around there. Even with the news yesterday of that, they're kind of just going to put a pause on it. They're not going to hike the rates again at the moment. The market has kind of responded both ways about it. We're up, we're down. It's kind of in between. But it like you said, is really about the 10-year treasury, and we'll see what happens in the future with the rates. They think that there might be one more hike, this year or early next year, and then possibly 2 decreases next year in 2024.
Interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, so everyone can understand this. When we talk about the Fed fund rate, we've talked about this before. The Fed fund rate doesn't directly impact mortgage rates. It affects your credit card rates, why CDs are so high, your auto loans, any kind of personal loans. It's basically the rate that banks charge each other to borrow from each other, borrow from the Fed.
The prime rate and then the HELOCs too.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Which the reason I bring that up is the HELOCs rate, which I'm sure you could bring this up, they become more popular now because people have used to having all this cash, used to having more cash flow, whatever, over COVID, more extra income, and then your spending habits are the same. So now they're like, okay, I have $200,000 of equity. I don't want to touch my first mortgage. Let me pull up a second one. So we're also seeing that people pulling out HELOCs at a higher rate because the prime rate I think is 8.5 on those, which that's the raw. So you have another usually 2 or something on that. So call it 10%. People are borrowing money on that as well.
You're seeing an increase of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are, I think all of the indexes are so crazy with the number of people who are like carrying debt month to month on credit cards, are defaulting and things like that. But so going back to just so everybody's clear, the 10-year treasury bond is what mortgage rates fluctuate by. And because that has now reached a 1-year high, it's at like 4.33%. That's what we're ticking off of. And that's basically what the cost of people who own those treasury bonds are charging the government because we have such great amounts of debt. So to carry that amount of debt, that's why those bonds are having that higher yield right now. So explain to us kind of like what we're up against as far as interest rates go, and then, kind of what we are thinking for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would say as far as what they are right now, I would say you can expect anywhere between a 6.5 and maybe 7.5, depending on your situation. If you're getting something that's a little bit non-traditional, they're going to be higher than that. And then in the future, like I personally think I was really hopeful about it previously. I was like, we're going to get it. Next year's an election year. And with next year being an election year, they might want to make the economy seem better than it is. They might lower their interest rates to kind of get people back into spending in good moods. But I think we're going to be, at a higher interest rate for the foreseeable future. I think when these interest rate drops come, I don't think they're going to be, unfortunately, crazy like we want them to be. I don't think we're going to go from a 7.5 to a 4.5 and, have another refi boom. I think we might be sitting at maybe 6, 5.5. And honestly, 5.5, if you got something around there, I think that looks really sexy compared to 7.5 right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, okay, why do we, sitting in this room, think that is not doom and gloom?
Because I think it's all about perspective. So it's going to be it's a pros and a con. Yes, right now you might be buying at a higher interest rate, and that sucks. Let me say, nobody wants to pay more, interest. Somebody wants to have a higher payment. But what are the advantages you can take if you are looking into buying within this market?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
So, I think we have to kind of go backwards a little bit and look at what the market was like before they started raising interest rates. And if you go back to the spring of last year, before they got in the middle of it and started raising the funds rate, it was a feeding frenzy for buyers who were trying to purchase, multiple offers,
overbid.
50,000 over list price was not uncommon.
Waiving contingencies left and
right.
Yeah.
If it was like you got a house, like you don't, you saw it, you need to write an offer on it right now. Like there wasn't really time to shop around.
You need to have $20,000 over appraisal in cash.
Yeah. You have to pay for your closing costs. Like it was really like a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And especially it was really hard, I think, too, on first time home buyers. And for people who didn't have a lot of extra funds just sitting around.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, if it's easy to look at it and go, okay, well, rates are high, so it's a bad time to buy. And I think if you look back to where we were, some of it didn't make a whole lot of sense, but some of it does because we have such low levels of inventory here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That is not going to change.
Right.
It's just not going to change. There's no inventory genie that's going to come dump 10,000 houses in the next 2 years here. It's not going to happen.
No, especially with more people coming to Vegas. We're still probably trying to catch up on new builds. I think the stat is probably 40-50% of houses don't have a mortgage on it. There's not a lot of people that are wanting or needing to sell. So it's like we're going to have this low inventory issue for a while, most likely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be decades.
Yeah.
Oh, I would agree.
Yeah, at least 5 years or a decade. If we ever see, I don't think we'll ever see inventories like levels like we had previously. And when you think about it, we didn't have institutional investors in the market, 10 years ago, yes. 15 years ago, not really. They were just kind of getting in. We didn't have, 60%, and I don't know what the number is here in Vegas, but so many homeowners with so much equity and very low interest rates. So unless rates go back down into like the 3% range, I don't see a lot of people. There are people who always want to buy and sell, right? There's always going to be a need, but not in masses.
Yeah.
So what are the principles that I think we want everyone to know, leaving this podcast from listening or watching today is we've talked about so many elements of this, right? So let's speak to first-time home buyers first.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and I love you guys. That's what I have to say. Yeah. You guys have gotten beat up in this market, and it's tough. And here's the thing. I don't know. I haven't talked to a lot of first-time home buyers from the 80s. Like, we only know what we know right now, and I don't know if there's ever a good or easy time as a first-time home buyer. Like, you guys might know better than I would. I think it's always going to be hard, but especially I just want to take my little first-time home buyers like a little baby and put them in my hand and say, come here, it's going to be okay. But take advantage of it. Like it's, I'm not going to lie, you're probably going to have payment shock, especially if you're coming from your parents' basement. Yeah. It's going to be hard. But don't let that deter you, because now the 30% of people buying are first-time home buyers. So like there's a large group of you out there. A lot of them are millennials. The average age of a first-time home buyer is 33. So you're not behind. You're right on cue. You're right on your timeline. But take advantage of the market right now. Yes, interest rates are higher, but guess what? You're going to get in. You have more leverage. You have more buying power than you think. And don't wait till the rates drop, because it's going to be a bloodbath for you again.
Yeah, I think, getting FHA offers accepted, which is probably going to be, unless you have 5 or 10% to put down, you're probably going to go FHA as a first-time buyer.
Right.
If we go back into a seller's market, those offers are going to be harder to get accepted.
Which I think the stigma around FHA is changing a little bit, which I'm really happy to see, because I think people saw it as a weaker offer as a first-time home buyer, and it's really not. FHA has more leverage on some guidelines than conventional does. But also financially, it makes more sense because once they lower the mortgage insurance rate on FHA, it's honestly 9 times out of 10, it's cheaper payment-wise for a client to go that way than conventional.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think with that changing and agents knowing that, they're willing to accept an FHA offer and go, oh, okay, it's just cheaper for the client. They're not a less than client or less quality or anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think for a lot of first-time buyers, there's a difficult decision to be made because in some cases it might be cheaper to rent than it is to buy.
Absolutely.
But there is some price protection at least built in. If you buy a house, your mortgage payment is set, short of taxes and HOA going up, and homeowners insurance, which we're seeing a lot lately. Yeah. You're not going to see, massive hikes. You're not going to have to move. And there is also the potential that when rates go down, because I think the common consensus is eventually they will go back down. And you can also refinance. There's tax benefits. I mean, that's something that sometimes you don't really look at. There's the tax credit, the mortgage interest tax deduction that you get for having a mortgage. So there's other benefits. It's not necessarily a simple apples to apples comparison. So don't necessarily get deterred right off the bat if the payment initially seems higher than the rent or is higher than the rent.
Because honestly, the reality is it probably will be right now, depending on what you get. But I would say overall, I feel like we're having lag time right now where it's like our mortgage payments, like our rent payments haven't caught up with that yet. We're seeing some of it. But I mean, I had this conversation with a friend the other day and I said, look, like, I'm going to tell you right now. I said, how much is your rent? She's like, $2,000. And I said, you're going to have payment shock. Let me just tell you that right now. But if you wait another year, that's $24,000 you have just essentially flushed down the toilet, and that you're not going into, like, at least your payment's going to be higher, but at least you have an asset, you have something to draw on, you have equity, it's appreciating, and you're not just dumping money every month. So.
Well, and I don't know if we'll see this again, but especially during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were renting houses that the owner decided to sell. And I had a number of friends who had to like unexpectedly move because the owner decided they wanted to sell their property.
Yeah.
And so that's something you can't predict and is very undesirable if you're not in a position or you're not thinking about moving at that. You're having to coordinate showings. And I mean, there's just so much of that's out of your control.
Absolutely.
For sure. Okay. So let's talk to now people who are in a great interest rate. They own their home. Maybe they bought it pre-pandemic and got it at a low price. Yeah. So maybe they want to move. Maybe they're feeling a little stuck. We're hearing that golden handcuff term a lot.
Yeah.
So what is our advice for people who are looking to move and they don't want to give up their low interest rate and the low price that they purchased their home for?
Yeah. My answer is to keep it. Like keep your low interest rate. Don't do a cash out refinance. Don't sell it, which doesn't help our inventory issue. But for the seller, like keep your house, or for I guess the new buyer, keep your house, rent it out, have cash flow on that. You can do a HELOC on it. You can get that money if you don't have down payment, but you only need 5%. So you can buy a new house, and even still, I would say take advantage of the market right now too. Don't wait. Even though you might have more buying power because you might have more access to reserves or to extra funds, I still would say you're going to get a better deal now to buy now with the higher rates, even though we don't have a lot of inventory. But if you see a house and you see something that works for you, or you want to upgrade or move or downsize, like now still I think would be the time.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important piece. If it makes sense and you see a house you want to buy and the numbers work, don't get too caught up on the rate that you have or the house that you have. Utilize if you need to use some equity. If not, even better, you've got immediate cash flow, which I think is, for most investors, they're not going in and getting cash flow immediately when they have a rental.
Oh, no, not right now, especially if you're financing it.
And I think there's something that maybe people don't really think a lot about. And I think I said this earlier, like, if you have higher mortgage rates, higher funds rate, all those treasury bonds mean higher savings rates.
Sure.
But if you have a house that's like, I have a house that's just under 4, and you buy a house that's, let's say, at 6.5, now you've got 2 investments. You've got kind of more of a blended rate that's much lower. And so you can't just look at it as the rate on the house that you have now. You've got 2 investment vehicles that are kind of kind of canceling some of that out.
Right, because that's your overall portfolio. And I know we get so stuck, like everybody wants to talk about interest rates all day long. And I'm like, oh, like I get it. But everyone's so hell-bent on it. And for I get it though, because we went from literally like 2% to now 7%. Like that is a huge jump. But I think if you can mentally kind of get over that and think beyond that, what does my life look like 5 years from now if I'm going to stay in this house or if I'm going to move? What does my life look like now if I'm going to buy my first house today or if I'm going to wait another year, 2 years, 5 years? Like it's about the longevity and it's planning for your future and not being so caught up on the rate or these, I don't want to say little details because it is a really big, important, huge piece of the puzzle. But kind of thinking beyond that, like what your blended rate would be, like, other funds, like, renting out the house, things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and let's say if I had a crystal ball and I could say that 2.5 years from now, we're going to be back at 5 or 5.5%, right? What's going to happen? The market's going to be bananas. You're going to have multiple offers. It's going to be
because we're still going to have an inventory issue.
Right. We're still going to have an inventory issue. And, you've missed out on 2.5 years of appreciation in this new house that you're going to be in. So, there's a missed opportunity there.
Basically throwing away $50,000 at that point of just rent. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So we teach people how to invest in real estate.
Yeah.
So it's not always a good time to buy.
Yes. I think it's really important to talk about that because I actually saw that on a comment yesterday. Like realtors will never tell you that it's not a good time to buy. Like that's not true. Like if I'm sitting down with you and it's not the right time for you or it doesn't make sense, I will tell you. I've talked to people out. I'm like, maybe I'm the worst realtor in the world. I've talked to a handful of friends.
I think you're the most honest.
Yeah. I've talked people out of buying this year because it wasn't the right time for them. There wasn't an immediate need. There wasn't any urgency. It was like, do you really need to? Does it make financial sense? No, then maybe waiting is the right choice for you. That's not going to be the right choice for everybody.
Right. No. Not at all. I've had clients many a times where I've told them not to refinance. And I'm like, she's like, I had one client, she was, I want to roll in my student loans. I said, no, I'm not going to let you marry your student loans with your house. And that is too much. And I was like, you have a great deal right now. No. But I mean, to your point, it's like, my best friend right now is buying a house and I'm so overjoyed for them, not locally. And I kept telling her, she's like, oh my gosh, it's so scary. And and I'm trying to handhold through the process. And I'm like, you will find the right house and it'll feel right.
Yeah.
And because they had thought about buying in Texas couple years ago. And I told them not to. I was like, I don't know how long you guys going to be there. That's really hard property to manage so far away, even if you have a property manager. So it's like, to your point, like sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But then don't let it also stop you from if you do find the right house.
Right. For sure.
I think that's an important piece is the right house.
Of course, this is what we tell our clients all the time.
Because that's your lifestyle. Yeah. It makes up so much of your literally life, like where you lay your head at night. Can you entertain in that place? Does it have a nice backyard? Like I have a house right now. It has a great backyard. I spend all my mornings out there and all my evenings and I eat dinner out there every night. It is a huge part of my lifestyle. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. What's meant for you will not pass you by. I firmly believe that and say that to all of our clients, especially when we're hitting walls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting rejected offers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, just make one more.
And you honestly, sometimes you don't know until you're looking back. So Amber and I helped a friend of mine buy a house earlier this year.
Oh yeah.
And it was his first house. He's in his late 30s and he was very nervous.
Yes, he was.
And it was very shaky, but we locked, he closed and prices have gone up. Interest rates have gone up and he is so thrilled.
Oh, good.
But there was a lot of hand holding and a lot of fear. And it was funny because everybody that he worked with was like, oh, it's going to take you a lot of offers. It's going to be really difficult. He got an accepted offer on the first house we offered on.
That's crazy.
And he closed and he is like, we were just texting the other day. He is so thrilled that he got in when he did. So
yeah, you never know. It's like, even if you buy now and you're worried about interest rates dropping, like what happens if they were to rise and you got in now? But to his point too, I remember that specifically, I think it was about in May and there was, there's a really a lot of drama around, I think it was, May 14th or something like that, of like having all these new data come out, these numbers, and thought it was going to be a way bigger shift in interest rates than it ended up being. But trying to time his rate lock around that too and get him the best deal possible, it was nerve wracking, especially for a first time homebuyer. But I'm glad he got in when he did too.
Yeah, I think it was we had a call and it was a decision. Do we lock today? Do we wait for the information? I was like, okay, well, you're kind of I don't want to say it's like gambling, but you're kind of like, okay, what do we think is the best case scenario? What do we think is the worst case scenario? Can you afford the house at, today? Yes. If it goes the other way, how does this look? How much savings could there be? We locked and then it went up and it was like, oh my, we were so glad.
Yeah. I've gotten knock on wood. I've gotten so lucky with locking. Usually the right wood too.
So you were saying why you want to jump in right now.
Yeah, I think you were asking what's the message we would tell people right now. So what I think, and this is just my opinion, is based on what came out of the press conference that the chairman gave. He was talking to some of the reporters and they were talking about the process that they go through in voting for kind of where they think things are going. And when they did their vote, 12 were in favor of raising the rate and 7 were not. So there's not a lot of confidence yet that they've been able to stave off inflation. And so, the odds are more in favor of another rate hike in November than there not being one. So I think it's kind of like, I don't want to say a perfect storm, but if rates do go up in November, I think right now is a good time to buy because you can lock your rate in now, buy it down. You can be in before the holidays. And I think that makes it a really good time, without knowing what's going to happen. And I think higher rates are going to be here for the foreseeable future.
I would agree with you. And I think for somebody who's looking into debating right now, do I want to buy? Do I not want to buy? Do I want to get in? I'm going to wait till the rates drop. I think either way you win. So let's say you get in right now, you lock your loan, you close before, you get in before Thanksgiving and then the rates go up. Guess what? You just won because you locked in a lower rate. Let's say for some reason they drop, which most likely they were not going to drop until next year if they do drop. Guess what? You win again because you can refinance. So either way, you're gonna be covered, and either way you're gonna get a lower rate. It's just how much I'm going to pay for the house and how much competition am I going to have.
And real estate's happening in real time, and we don't see the effects of it until weeks, months later sometimes. And so the messaging really should be, we need to be linked up with people who know what they're doing to get us a good deal.
Absolutely. Because it, like you said, it's happening right now. While you're sitting here hemming and hawing and do I want twiddling your thumbs, other people are out getting deals and they're winning. And so I know it's easy just to sit and think, I have time, I'm going to wait. And you do. But it's depending, is it going to be a better deal for you now or for you later? And like I said, it's not a one size fits all. It might not be the right time for you. And I completely empathize and understand that. But if you're sitting around really thinking about it, then I would say, even if you're looking to upgrade and to buy another primary, or you're looking as a first time home buyer, to get in now, because when we say now, we mean right now. Because
right now.
There might be talk of another Fed hike like we talked about next month, and you're going to want to get in before that, or whenever they drop them, they're going to have so many more buyers come to the market. So it's really pitiful during these, especially these fall months. Like you said, house has been on the home, or houses, some words.
We'll cut it out.
Like you said, some of the house has been sitting a bit longer. That's a really good time to get in. I think fall is a great time. In winter, it's a great time. You have more serious buyers. You have more serious sellers, less buyers, less competition for you to get into a house.
Yeah. And I think there's one thing that we really haven't even talked about, but we still have strong amounts of relocation here. Other markets are highly seasonal. So we have clients right now that have decided they're taking their house off the market and they're not going to sell until spring. So there's an additional segment of buyers that are not going to be in the market right now. But let's say, we had a crystal ball and we looked forward over the next year. If the Fed does raise rates again in November, that's a very small window of time between January. And I think because inventory is so low, you're going to see more buyers coming back into the market January, February. We go into spring selling season.
We didn't even have really, we didn't have a winter, so to speak, in the market last year. It was steady, which usually it's pretty low in, January, February. Nobody wants to move. Yeah.
Well, and the same thing with seasonality that we were talking to the same buyers about is that they were looking for a home with the pool. And a home with the pool looks totally different in the summertime than it does in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It goes from being something that's coveted to something that's a liability.
Yeah.
So there are other, things that you can use to your advantage. That's how we teach people to invest in real estate, right? Is how to leverage what they have and how to use their particular situation to their advantage.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing too is new home inventory.
Yeah.
So a lot of the builders have their year ends at October, November, December, and they're trying to get that inventory off before the new fiscal year. So they will do incentives, price drops, upgrades and options. I mean, they're really they'll do everything in order to get those houses sold. It's not like a seller who can take their house off the market and wait until spring. Like, they have to answer to Wall Street, and if they want to keep their job,
they've got
to get those houses
They have to get them
moved.
off the books. For liabilities.
Yeah. And we're seeing incentives, in the like 4.9, 5.5% ranges where that's just a given. That's their offering. The price is what it is, but the offering on the back end is that you're going to pay less for financing. And then if you use their lender, you get closing costs paid or something, on that side. And then in addition to that, I've seen a couple, I think Century's doing like an appliance package for a washer and dryer, things that you would typically have to purchase when you buy a new home. And new homes are great they're great for so many people.
Right.
But I think particularly first-time home buyers who don't understand what, maintenance
all that
costs.
goes into it.
And all the upkeep a home requires. And, or just don't know. I have some clients right now who I'm selling their house. And unfortunately, they didn't know when they had a major problem with their house to go through their homeowner's insurance.
Oh, no.
And they went into debt to fix the problem themselves. And now they're paying it off with the proceeds, with a portion of the proceeds from their home.
Yeah.
So they'll never get into that situation again, but this is why you need to link up with the right people.
Absolutely.
Right. So I was like, they probably didn't know you when they bought it.
Nope.
Because I was like, I had a client of mine who canceled. She meant to cancel her home warranty. She canceled her homeowner's insurance instead.
Yikes.
Oopsie daisy.
Yeah.
You only make that mistake once.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway is, if you're waiting for rates to go down, you're taking a very big gamble. If that's really the only thing. And you might be
waiting a while.
Yeah.
You're not.
Because even if let's just say they drop to 6 next year, 7.5 to 6 is not a huge jump. If you're waiting for this 4.5 rate to come back that we haven't seen since 2019, honey, you're going to be waiting a while.
Yeah.
And what are you doing while you're waiting is my question.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you the number of conversations that I've had with people over the years about housing prices and selling homes and selling my own home. My favorite that still stands out is from someone who was burnt during the recession. And they said, I will never buy a home again over $100 a square foot.
Oh.
And that was 7 years ago now.
And
And if they would have bought 7 years ago, then they could have been secured. Yep.
Yeah.
$200 a foot.
Yep. And now we're barely, it's a deal if you can get under $200 a foot.
Yeah.
And that's just the situation that we're going to be in because of the supply.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to your point, it's like deals are out there, opportunities out there, but you have to be willing to, like I said, link up with the right people, know what's realistic, because it's not like when someone comes to me and they say, I want a $1,500 mortgage payment. I said, should about 5 years ago. Like, I'm sorry, but that's or I'm like, how much down payment do you have? Because I'm like, that's not the reality.
Yeah.
And also the payments, I know people are having payment shock right now, but you typically make more money year over year. And that payment that's going to shock you today is going to feel comfortable, which I don't want to push them into that. But I had a client who their payment, it was new build, 5.5 or something was going to be the rate. They're going to have $2,700 payment. And I said, you're going to wish you had that $2,700 payment in a year or two from now. Like it might feel like a lot right now,
sure,
but guaranteed, because that's how it happened to me. You go, oh, look, it's X amount of dollars. You go, oh, well, that's my rent now.
Yeah.
That's basically what rent's on now anyways.
Yeah.
27.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about your real estate investment as a vehicle, as part of your larger portfolio,
right.
In my uncle has this saying, what it looks like from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
The ground from an airplane looks much different, from that wide of a perspective.
Absolutely.
And so when you're looking at keeping a home as part of your portfolio to pay for your child's school, to set your child up with a home when they're older, to, gift. And that's how a legacy is built. And that is how generational wealth is built.
Yeah. Yeah, it when in doubt, zoom out, because I know we get stuck over these details, and like the interest rate is extremely important. I'm not negating that by any means, because it's largely affects your payment, but also of what your life looks like 5 years from now, what your life looks like even 2 years from now, and what your game plan and where you're going, because we get so stuck on the now, but life's happening now and real estate's happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's deal to be had.
Yeah,
for sure. When in doubt, zoom out.
Yeah.
When in doubt, zoom out.
I love that.
Good things fall apart so better things can fall together.
Yep.
And come together.
Yes.
You have to let go. And what do I tell my kids? Sometimes you have to let go of something. Like you can't, like, what there's a saying, like you can't reach for something new if your hands are still full of yesterday's junk, right? So you have to let go of old things so that you can have new things.
Right.
Yeah.
And good things.
Yeah. And that includes ideas too of, self-limiting beliefs and things that, you say, I can't afford this. Like there are certain really mental things that come with this.
Yeah.
But
I think just being stuck to mentally, like, well, this is how it used to be. This is how it should be.
Yeah.
This is how it used to be.
Yeah.
My friend got it for this. And it's like, hey, honey, you are in your own timeline. You're playing your own game. And I think the average age of a home buyer is 33. Like, you're not late. You're right on time.
Yeah.
What's meant for you will be.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's meant for you will not pass you by.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for being on today.
Thank you.
We will do this again in the next few months. If you have any questions about real estate, you can leave them here if you're watching on YouTube, or go find us on Instagram. I am Tambourine Home.
Meg Holmes.
And Amber Romero.
We'll see you next time on the Ended Up in Vegas podcast.